Good morning, everyone. Welcome. As you know, the people sitting up here have had a busy week with committees of conference, and so we're happy to come to something that is non-controversial. So, so anyhow, we'll proceed. Um, we'll start with the tabled items. I believe that. Oh, the minutes first. Sorry. Why do I forget the minutes? Always, it seems I always do. Okay, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of our April 15th meeting? Thank you, Senator. Second by Senator Daniels. Are there any comments, questions, thoughts? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. Now we move to old business.
I'll abstain.
And I understand that we are ready to remove FIS 22-129, dealing with the Department of Safety. And our question from the last meeting was that we wanted to see the policy on how that operated. So if I could have a motion to remove FIS 22-129 from the table, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Second. All right. All those in favor of removing FIS 22-129 from the table, please raise your hand. Thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion on this request from safety? Seeing none.
Move the item, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll? Once you find it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, item 22-129, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Representative Emery votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
9-0. FIS 22-129 is approved. I also understand that someone wants to remove FIS 134, 22-134, dealing with the New Hampshire Liquor Commission.
Move it from the table.
Okay, Senator D'Alessandro moves to remove it from the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Representative Edwards. Are there any comments about this or?
Madam Chair,
Oh.
it's hard to see me down here, so I don't know how to get your
Okay,
attention very good.
I'm sorry. Well, it's a different setup.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So let's vote on removing it from the table first.
Can we do a discussion before removing it, before our vote?
No, let's remove it and then we can discuss.
Okay.
Okay? Unless, well, go ahead. I'm easy.
So I was just going to ask the senator, what conditions did we set when we tabled it, and do you think those conditions have been met?
Thank you. If I might, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Dillis, please pull your mic closer.
Okay. It's usually not my problem.
I know. That's all right.
Yes, thank you for the question. I did speak with the commissioner. He has, he's spoken with the person that owns the property. It's a question of manpower, and they're going to work things out. I think they've had a conversation with the governor And at this point in time, it's, everything is okay. You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Could I have a show of hands to remove FIS 22-134 from the table? Unanimous. Do I have a motion to approve FIS?
Move the item.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Who was that? Senator Gray, was that you?
Actually, I think it was Representative.
Okay. It's just I like to be able to let people know who did that. So Representative Edwards seconds the motion. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Okay, FS 22-134. Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Representative Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Senator Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
Vote being 9-0, FIS 22-134 is approved. Now in tab 3,
Madam Chair, before we come off of two, may I make a point about one of the tabled items?
you may.
Thank you. It's my understanding that FIS 22023 related to the Prescription Drug Affordability Board, that we had asked for them to go through the rulemaking process before we take it off the table. And the information I've received is that no request for a rule review has been submitted at this point. So it's still in stasis.
Thank you. Okay, in tab 3, we have a letter from Senator Reagan on the Legislative Performance Audit and Oversight Committee relative to the recommendation for the Department of Education oversight on the provisions of special education. Do I have a motion to accept the requests for audit?
I move the item.
Thank you, Senator D'Alessandro and Senator Rosenwald. I would just like to say that this is going to be a huge audit,
Yes.
and as a result, it will be broken down into segments that our auditors will look at each area separately. So we should expect over time several reports from our auditors on special education. So, will the clerk please call the roll?
22-200. Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Yes. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote is 9-0. The audit can proceed. So thank you very much. Okay, I have several items that we are going to take off consent, or have been requested to be taken off consent. FIS 197, FIS 160,
160.
FIS 162, FIS 196, FIS 161, and FIS 198. Are there any other items to come up, come off consent? Senator Daniels.
Madam Chair, I understand that FIS 175 has been withdrawn.
That's correct. Representative Edwards?
I only have one question, but it covers two items. It covers FIS 22-172 and 173, but they could be addressed in just one question.
So you would ask that we take those two off the table or off consent?
If it's easier, we could just do one. I don't know if it makes any difference, but it's the same question for both items.
Okay, if we don't take both of them off and you don't like the answer that you receive,
Okay.
then
Okay.
you can't retract it, okay?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to pull both off.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair.
FIS 172 and 173. Yes, Representative Leachman.
155, please.
Okay, FIS 155. Oh, sorry, I missed that one. I thought we had that one already off. Okay. Is there anything else to be taken off the table? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the remainder of the items on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Senator Daniels and Senator D'Alessandro. Okay. Oh, yes, we need, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll start with tab 4, FIS 22-155.
Good morning. For the record, Marie Mullen from the Department of Transportation, Director of Finance.
Representative Leishman?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for appearing. So on number 5 on page 2, there's some mention about the Easy Pass system. And as you know, there's been some concern by Fiscal about the number of people that are sliding through Easy Pass and not paying. Has there been any more progress on collection or enforcement? Or it says in this particular case, I have no immediate effect on revenue, however, may improve the ability of system to collect transactions other than Easy Pass. So it kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, so this particular transfer request is with our interstate IAG group, and that's with Easy Pass. And so this hub that they're creating will make it easier for us to connect with other Easy Pass agencies across the country. So currently, we connect with those on the East Coast, and this hub that's being created will allow us to connect with the Midwest, the West Coast, and those agencies that use Easy Pass there. So when someone from another state is coming through our Easy Pass, we'll be able to automatically collect those fees without having to send out invoices and things. So that's one. That's why it's not immediate. Building that hub will take a few years, and then once that's built, we'll be able to do that. But we've also implemented several other areas. We've added some additional staff in our collections. We have about 15 staff in our Easy Pass collections group that are going after and collecting against violators. We've also had a bill this session, SB 442, that has been passed by both the House and Senate to try to restrict some of the folks who violate that go into a DMV hold, to be able to restrict their ability to kind of a loophole of they were able to transfer their title to a family member or someone else and avoid paying the fees before they were able to re-register their car. So that bill, once the governor signs it, will eliminate that loophole and allow us to be able to collect from these violators sooner and not have that loophole for them. So we're always looking at those ways and trying to prevent the violators in the first place. So we're always looking at different things we can do to try to improve the collections on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any, Senator D'Alessandro?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on Representative Leachman, I looked at the little report that you sent us on delinquencies, and it looked as if there's 5 million outstanding. Is that still the case?
Yes, that was as of April 30th.
Okay. So 5 million in delinquencies, and then on the other side, you've collected
collected over 11
11
million.
million.
And that was over that 4-year time frame. That's over a 4-year time
Right,
frame, or
right.
nearly 4 years, because we're not done with this fiscal year yet. That was on $463 million of revenue that was collected. So that turns out to be, it's about 1% outstanding right now of total revenues that we've brought in. So this collections is about 1%, and we still pursue those, because in the law, we're not allowed to let people, we're not allowed to release the tolls. We have to collect the tolls. It's in the law that they're required to pay. So
Sure, sure. Okay. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the fact that there are significant delinquencies. People are avoiding the tolls. And just one, if I might, one further question. The fact
Certainly.
the fact that we don't have the ability to go through after 10 o'clock at night, you have to use. There's nobody at the toll booth.
right.
Right.
So
From
it's
10
all
from 10 to
electronic
6.
tolling, and that's part of this the invoicing process.
right.
So there are multiple ways that folks, we've tried to make it easier for them to set up. So there's non-cash payments which have come out, and at 7-Eleven and CVS, folks can go and pay cash and just get a rechargeable card, so their name and everything isn't associated with it. They can get an Easy Pass, and with that, you get a discount. So if you're a state resident, you get a 30% discount if you have an Easy Pass. So we try to encourage folks to do that, because they get a discount
Sure.
paying cash or paying through this invoice process. You get invoiced and you get another 50-cent fee on top of the dollar. So if they were to get an Easy Pass, they would actually have a discount and be paying less for the tolls.
So is it proving to be a worthy use to eliminate the toll collectors from 10 in the evening until 6 in the morning? Is it a zero-sum game, or is it a plus?
Yeah, I mean, when we looked at that, we're actually saving money by doing that. The volume of traffic during those hours was not significant enough to warrant the salaries, benefits, and all the other electricity and other costs. So we found it to be a cost savings, and that's why we implemented that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any further questions? Could I have a motion to accept FIS
Move the item, Madam Chair.
22-155? Thank you. Do I have a second? Senator D'Alessandro, thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
FIS 22-155, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Representative Enrique votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
Vote being 9-0, FIS 22-155 passes. We now turn to FIS 22-172. And
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good
members
morning.
of the committee. Dennis Goulet, Commissioner of the Department of Information Technology.
Representative Edwards, you had a question?
I do, thank you. Thank you for taking my question, Mr. Goulet, and thanks for the phone call the other day. That was very helpful. The one question I have for this and the next is we're moving software money, $221,000 to pay for consultants. I don't doubt that you could use some consultants given all the work that's going on, but I'm just curious, the $355,000 between software licenses not being needed, I must be making a bad assumption about your process. I would think that we're still in the first year of the budget, and we should have pretty good estimates going into a budget on what our software licenses are going to cost us. And in this case, it seems like maybe we're off a lot, or I just don't understand the scale. So could you maybe just explain how we found the money?
Sure. There's two sides to the equation, and I'll start with the Department of Safety item. That item we did, we were in the process of getting ready to rebid those services during the planning horizon for the budget. So we didn't know, and honestly, the wage inflation inside the IT sector has been pretty steep. So I think that contributed to the bid coming in higher than we expected. The two areas where we actually had things come in lower than expected and allowed us to do this move were, one was we actually were ahead of schedule on a retirement, which saved us some money and licensing money in that. And then the other is a project that was actually delayed so that we're not spending it in this fiscal year. We'll start spending it next fiscal year. So that covers the Department of Safety. In transportation, the largest part of that not spend was scope reduction that reduced cost of project and gave us headroom in order to invest in the wiring. There's a additional one where we did Oracle came in to do an audit. And usually that goes the wrong way. You end up spending more money, but we actually found ways to save the state money via that audit. And so that actually reduced the cost at DOT.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, ma'am. I think Mr. Galay wandered into 173, which I kind of invited him to, but with 173 open, I would want to also know if, because of the supply chain issues, do you want to tell us whether or not we have any vulnerabilities to replacing key hardware infrastructure due to the unanticipated supply shortages, or do you think we're actually okay even if things are delayed a bit?
Great question. This committee did approve some ARPA funding in a prior meeting that allowed us to really essentially replace the major part of the executive branch network. We've got a significant percentage of it. I think it's like 4/5 of it came in pretty quickly. That last fifth is hung up in the supply chain problems. With respect to the FIS 173 and the wiring that we would want to do, the wiring is definitely, particularly fiber optics, which we won't need much of, is definitely a supply chain issue, partly because of supply chain and partly because fiber is in incredible demand right now, and so it's being bought up as quickly as it shows up. So that could take longer than we want it to.
So just a little follow-up.
Yes, please.
So to get to the one point, you're not ready to tell us that we have any critical shortfalls or risks associated with the supply chain.
I don't anticipate any. What we've done is we've changed our approach, our project approach, so that we can continue to move forward and benefit the state without waiting to have all of the equipment in.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Okay, could I have a motion, please, to accept FIS 22-172?
So moved.
Can I-
Second.
Yeah, just a moment. Can I do both?
Sure.
Okay, 172 and 173.
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Edwards. Thank you, Representative Lynn. Second? Yes. Okay.
You can't do two at one time.
Oh,
I have enough trouble doing one at one time.
well, I'll hold off on, give you time.
I'm caught up.
You're caught up, okay.
This-
Will the clerk call the roll on FIS 172 and 173?
Okay, this is 22-172. Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote on 172 is 9-0.
Okay, thank you. FIS 172 passes. And since it was a dual motion, I will just have the clerk record the same vote on 173.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
The vote is 9-0.
Thank you. The vote is 9-0, and the FIS 22-173 passes. Thank you, Mr. Goulet. We now turn to FIS 22-197, Office of Professional Licensure and Certification.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Lindsay Courtney, Executive Director, Office of Professional Licensure and Certification.
Thank you. Representative Leishman?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for appearing. So I had some questions on your explanation.
Certainly.
You mentioned acquiring more space, developing public kiosks. However, it goes on to say in the second paragraph that you've already outgrown your space. So I was kind of confused on the whole structure there.
Yes, I agree that we probably could have made that more clear. I think we've certainly outgrown the space the way it's currently structured. As you may recall, we originally moved from Philbrook back in, I think it was July of 2020. The initial move was on a 30-day lease to approximately, I want to say 3,000 square feet, as that was the only floor that was available at the time at 7 Eagle Square. And also it allowed us to actually execute the lease expeditiously because we needed to get out of the building. We subsequently amended the lease or entered into a full 10-year lease with the first, second, and third floors. And if my memory serves me correctly, that was approximately 20,000-ish square feet, which was substantially less than what we had at Philbrook, which was approximately 30,000 square feet. So we moved into the building with additional staff than we had when we first moved in Philbrook in 2015, and we had fewer space. So when Deloitte vacated that space on the fourth floor of 7 Eagle Square, we again sought an amendment to our existing space or our existing lease to acquire that space. And that was approved by Governor and Council last year, September, I want to say it was 15th of 2021. The way the space was originally configured, it doesn't allow us to use the space effectively. So I would say that there's sufficient space, but it's not configured in a way that allows us to effectively utilize the space. I will also say that I think of the requests, the renovation line items, I think are in class 103, which is not a significant amount of construction that needs to be done in the amount of 22,000.
Further question, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
So with these additional acquisitions or floors, you now have adequate space at Eagle Square?
I would say with our current staffing, we have adequate space. Of course, we continue to take on additional boards as time goes on. So I'm not sure that will be the case, in the future, if we can continue to take on additional agencies. But for right now, if we were to do the construction that is planned, and it really is just to make 2 additional conference rooms because our boards are required to meet in person, as well as to create a planned customer service space, our space should be sufficient.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any, Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. I think it's more a question for Commissioner Arlinghouse.
Certainly. Oh, don't leave.
Right. Thank you. Good morning to both of you. Director Courtney sent us some information indicating that the cost per square foot at Eagle Square was something like $22.50 or something. My question is, what is the average state cost per square foot for office space? Is it average? Is this on the average side or the
This is
high
probably
side?
not on the average side. So I don't have an average cost with me, and it depends a lot on you know, a lot of the space we lease is in, is out and about courthouses, for example. And so something like, we lease something like 15 courthouses around the state. And, you know, the lease in Coas is a lot less than the lease in Salem, for example, and that kind of thing. So it depends on the location, the type of fit up that's required. This space is downtown Concord, so it's higher than the statewide average would be. But when we bid the space, it was the lowest available space at the time. And so what typically happens is when we have a need for space, and this space was originally created by the need to close Philbrook, or not close Philbrook, but to reconvert Philbrook back to its prior use. And so we moved everybody out, and we looked at space in the city of Concord, anywhere in the city of Concord. And I think, and don't hold me to this because it's been a couple of years, but something like 3 or 4 spaces. Gail Rucker at the time was our lease coordinator, that she looked at, and this was the cheapest of the 3.
So relative to other space we lease in Concord, then
It's higher. It's higher. Downtown
a
is
lot?
all. You know what? I don't know. I can get you a list of what we pay, but I doubt it's a lot higher. But I think it's significantly.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would appreciate if you would forward that information.
I'll do a list of all the largish leases that we have in the downtown area.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Could I have a motion to approve FIS 22-197?
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Lynn. Do I have a second? Oh, okay. Thank you, Senator Gray. Will the clerk please call the roll?
FIS 22-197, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-197 is approved. Thank you for being with us. Okay, we now turn to tab 6, FIS 22-160 has been removed.
Good morning. There we go. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nathan White. I'm the CFO with the Department of Health and Human Services.
And good morning, Katya Fox, Director of the Division for Behavioral Health.
Thank you. Mr. White, I'd just like to welcome you back to the budget area. And I know for those of you that may not remember, Mr. White was with the LBA several years ago and is now back in the throes of budgeting for Health and Human Services, budgeting and coming here to answer our questions. So welcome back, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you very much. Happy to be back.
Okay. Does someone have, who had the question on FIS 160, 22-160, dealing with the 988 implementation? Okay, obviously.
I can always ask a question if you want one.
No, that's quite all right. Look at this, Mr. White. You come on the scene and everything is perfect. Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll? Oh, I need a motion.
Move the item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Second by Senator Gray. Will the clerk please call the roll? Representative Leishman.
FIS 22-160, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Henry votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Yes. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0 on FIS 22-162, the motion passes. I'm sorry, 160. I was hoping we could move faster. Okay, that's all right. FIS 22-160 is approved. We now are turning to FIS 22-162. Yeah, I know.
Good morning. For the record, Joe Christie, CFO for New Hampshire Hospital.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Ellen Lapointe, CEO at New Hampshire Hospital.
Thank you very much. Representative Edwards, you had a question?
Yes, ma'am. There are a list of projects here, and I have questions about 4 of the projects. The first one starts on page 4, item 2, make facility improvements based on JCHO standards. As I read that paragraph, it says nothing about what you're really going to do. What standard are we short in, and what do we have to do to get whole?
Thank you for the question, Representative Edwards. So,
Excuse me, could you pull your mic just a little bit closer?
sure. Thank you for the question, Representative Edwards. So this component speaks to fire stopping in particular. As you may be aware, in healthcare settings, we have to have secure firewalls and fire barriers within the facility. So New Hampshire Hospital does currently have some penetrations, is what they're referred to by Joint Commission, within our ceilings and in our walls that could be of smoke and fire concern if there ever was that type of issue within New Hampshire Hospital. So this component would address those areas within the hospital and shore up fire stopping capabilities within the organization. It also speaks to some door closers, which also have pertinence in regards to fire stopping.
All right, thank you. That's good information. We might want to include that level of detail in future requests. May I ask a follow-up on
Yes, you may.
3? Retain a consulting firm to advise the department on key aspects of the forensic hospital operation. This doesn't say how much we're going to spend and which particular key issues we think they're going to be looking at. Because I believe we funded the forensic hospital in the last budget, and it was a bunch of money to include consulting.
Correct. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
So from a dollar figure perspective, I believe we were estimating something, I want to say it was around $100,000 for this. This is really for the operations. So we do have the funding necessary to build a facility. We do have an architecture firm who has experience in constructing forensic hospitals, but we have no experience in operating one. And so we're really looking for somebody to have on retainer who has operated one of these before to help provide us some insight as to things to watch out for, and as well as maybe design considerations that they would have changed in the facilities that they had worked in that we have not yet thought of. So that was the intent of this.
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for the answer. Will you be asking them to specifically take a look at operationally what the impact might be on the virtualization of some of the services, such as remote counseling, those sorts of things?
Are you kind of speaking in regards to telehealth capabilities?
Yes, to have telehealth built into it so that we have flexibility on the manpower side.
I think in our experience during the pandemic, we've actually
tried some telehealth with New Hampshire Hospital. It's very challenging in an inpatient psychiatric setting to use telehealth services. Part of that face-to-face interaction and rapport that you build with patients is actually very important to the care that we deliver. So that's not something we've necessarily considered relative to this consulting engagement, just because in our experience at New Hampshire Hospital, it's been very challenging to implement.
So I'd like to just make a comment on that. Telemedicine started in telepsychiatry in 1962 at the Nebraska Medical Center, and Dartmouth started doing it. If there's one telemedicine clinical application that's really been proven, it's in the mental health area. So I would encourage you to push on that, because we could see New Hampshire Hospital as being both a catcher's mitt for telepsychiatry and as a support agency to remote out into the community. And so I'd really like to see you all challenge yourselves on the operational side to play a bigger role in a virtual healthcare system. So I have a different question.
Yes, but I have a question on this. Maybe I'm confused. You said that you had no experience in running a forensic hospital or forensic hospital. Maybe that is whatever the term is. I want to know who's been in charge of the forensic hospital that's currently located in the prison. I mean, you can't tell me you have no experience when I thought that your agency was the one that managed what went on within the men's prison.
So the secure psychiatric unit, is that what you're referring to, is part of the Department of Corrections. So New Hampshire Hospital does have some forensic patients within our H unit. However, the population that will be coming to New Hampshire Hospital into the forensic facility currently residing at SPU are overseen by Department of Corrections.
Okay, sorry, I had that wrong. Thank you. Senator Rosenwald, you had a question?
On a just kind of a different line, if I could. Thank you. Two of the items, number 7 and number 12, talk about new furniture in the cafe and non-specifically in the hospital. I'm wondering what the current balance is in the patient trust fund account, and whether you had considered covering these costs with that, as I think we've done in the past.
Thank you for the question, and it's a very good one. So the patient trust fund balance or principal overall stands at around $8 million. Purchasing furniture through the trust fund is not advised, I guess is the best way to put it. We've done so in the past, really only after a request for that funding through the legislature did not make it through the budget cycle. And we felt there was kind of a significant need to replace those items in a timely fashion. Most of the time it's because a lot of wood furniture is still in the hospital. Wood is not up to current standards for infection control, and that furniture can also be broken and used for object aggression. So we have not gone to the trust fund for this just because it's really not been advised.
Can I follow up?
Certainly.
Thank you. So I think the last time we looked at this trust fund in the budget process, the balance was about $4 million. It's now doubled. What do we spend that money on? I know it's to benefit patient experience, but that's a lot of money.
Absolutely. I think in my 3 years here, the trust fund has been around 7 million. It's now grown to 8.
And the majority of what we spend trust fund money on, we try to live on the interest earned every year and not necessarily touch a lot of the principal. And we do that because we use a lot of that funding to help with discharge means for patients. So if we're discharging a patient and they don't have a pair of shoes, or they don't have a set of clothing, or they might need first month's rent to get them into a new apartment, that's the majority of what we use the trust fund for today, is to try to help those transitions into the community for patients who don't have the resources necessary to do so.
Representative Edwards?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm down now on item 5, project 5, on the learning management system. And I don't know if Mr. Kane was able to get some information on this for us, but we had talked in prep for this that I believe that the Department of Administrative Services ought to have a learning management system already. And so it made me wonder, when I saw this as a separate standalone project, if you shouldn't be trying to leverage an existing LMS system that's already in-house, and then you can expand it if you have special training that you want included that's not there today. But I'd hate to see us going out and procuring another set of licenses that may be redundant.
Mr. Arlinghouse? Mr. Arlinghouse, if you prefer, you can use that
sorry?
mic. Yeah,
I don't have to boot out Nathan.
yeah, that's fine. I think they're all working.
Oh, I didn't realize they all work. And I apologize. I think Mike probably emailed me and I blew him off, and so sorry. You're quite correct that the Bureau of Education and Training ought to have a learning management system. That doesn't mean we do. We've asked for one in the capital budget for a few years, and so far, no takers. We're asking again this year, and we're hoping somebody might be interested in us having one, but we don't have an LMS that can piggyback, because so far the governor and the legislature have decided other priorities are more pressing than that.
Yes.
Okay, that's surprising. An LMS is core, I think, to HR development.
We think so too.
So given that we are probably on the verge of authorizing an LMS at a departmental level, buried in the bowels of New Hampshire Hospital, are you able to work with them on requirements so that we can maybe expand on their license, instead of finding out in a year when you get some money for one that we're unhappy and now we have two?
I think that would actually be ideal. We would love to work with them on it, particularly because if I'm a betting man, I bet we don't get it this year either. So, absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me. You're saying that it has to go through capital?
It's a very large expense, and the odds of anybody adding it to our operating budget are very slim. But new modules of the ERP and things like that are always done through capital. Yeah, I mean, what I can do, and I don't mean to be smart alecky about this. What I can do is that we'll talk to them, and all of us will talk to Dennis.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
My question,
Go ahead.
my next one was on 12, and Senator Rosenwald sort of teed it up a little bit. My challenge is I work on the Rockingham County Long-Term Nursing Home and on Division 3, and so I'm confused because I don't remember in which budget we made a point of adding money for new furniture. What did we not in Division 3 add money specifically for new furniture?
Not in the most recent budget cycle, no.
All right, so I'm just confused then. And then if I could just make an editorial comment on page 3, sort of in the middle there, the phrase "reimbursement is typically a fraction of the cost." just being literal, everything is a fraction of a cost, whether it's greater than 100% or lower than 100%. So that phrase means nothing except it frustrates people like me. If instead of writing that sort of language, if you could maybe insert a percentage.
Of course.
All right, so that's just editorial. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Representative or Senator D'Alessandro.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. While they're here, what's the status of the hospital at this point in time? What's the wait list at this point in time?
Thank you for the question. So currently our wait list as of this morning, our queue was at 25 patients.
Further question, Madam Chair?
Let me recover from that answer, please.
It's a tough one. And the monies that have been appropriated to renovate the building so that we could accommodate more patients, where do they stand? That was in the last operating budget before this one. We put $5 million in there for renovations.
So we currently have not had the ability to utilize those funds to start renovation projects. You're speaking of the E&F renovation?
Right. Further question, Madam Chair?
I'm not sure I understood your answer.
Okay.
I mean, to Senator D'Alessandro's question, you said you haven't been able to utilize those funds?
Not yet. We haven't been able to start renovation projects. However, so we do have a unit that isn't being occupied within E&F, but the other half of the unit is being occupied right now by adults and is full.
This has been a concern of mine for years now. Just one further question. What's the length of time on the wait list at this point?
Well, through a lot of really great work lately, we've been able to get our wait list down. In the past, in the 2 years that I've been there, I've seen folks waiting on the list for upwards of 2 weeks. However, more recently, we've been able to get patients in within 3 to, sometimes even 2, but probably 2 to 5 days.
And one further question. It's kind of escaped my mind as we were watching, going through this. But yes, if you were able to hire all of the vacancies that you hire, I was told by your precursor that we would have no wait list. Is that still a correct statement?
Yes, that's still accurate.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. When I look at the wait list data that the department keeps, sometimes I see that the Cypress Center has half of its beds available, and still we run a wait list of, right now it's 25. Last week I think it was 10 more, maybe higher than that. Why are those patients not appropriate for the Cypress Center?
I can't speak specifically to Cypress Center, but I think my understanding of what makes it challenging for those other admitting facilities is also a staffing issue. So when we see some of their beds come offline, it's because they're having staffing challenges that they have to work through before they're able to take more patients off the queue.
Are there any further questions? Representative Leishman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if you could tell us why the renovations. You said you haven't gotten to them, but why not?
Well, we've had difficulty from a census perspective trying to maintain the balance between admitting in the queue and really making sure that patients are able to get into New Hampshire Hospital as quickly as possible, while then also moving forward with a renovation. So we haven't been able to find that balance yet of being able to renovate the unit and still maintain where we need to be from a queue management perspective.
Representative Lynn.
Can I just follow up on Representative Leachman's question? I guess I'm not sure I understand the connection of. I mean, I understand the two things that you're talking about, but it seems like the people who would be, you know, doing the work to get a renovation in place would be different from the people who would be trying to decide, you know, to make sure that make sure that people are that for the facilities that are currently available, people are getting in as quickly as possible. I mean, I guess I guess I'm not sure I see the connection between those two, and I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit.
Sure, I can give it a try. It's really about capacity, and if we are taking a unit offline to be able to perform the renovation, then we are taking beds offline that currently are being filled and occupied by adults.
Okay,
Does
I'm,
that-
I'm sorry. I thought you had said earlier that there was a unit that was not being used, and I guess I was just sort of assuming that that would be one of the places where the renovations were made. And if that sounds like that assumption was incorrect.
Well, we do have a unit offline, and that's due to staffing currently.
Okay, which might, again, might suggest to me that maybe since there you can't staff that might be the place where somebody who knew about renovations would be doing the renovations.
So I can take that back to the commissioner and talk a little bit more about the status of that project. You know, I think any renovation project New Hampshire Hospital would be very grateful for. And as of right now, we just haven't been able to find that balance with the queue management.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are there further questions? I do have a, oh, yes, go ahead.
You. Part of what we did in the budget a few years ago was not only to fund renovations of that unit, but also to increase transitional housing money to solve the backdoor problem. What is the status of those transitional beds across the state? I know we opened the ones at Philbrook, but have we funded all of the, I think, 30 or 40 beds that we funded to open up the beds for the acutely ill?
Katja, just sit down at one of the, yeah. Absolutely not. The cameras are with us all over the place.
Again, for the record, I'm Katya Fox, Director of the Division for Behavioral Health, and I'm sorry my back is to you. And we did provide that information. I'd be happy to provide it additionally. I don't have it here today, of all of the housing and the amount of housing that we've seen increased. And we have used that housing funding that was afforded to the department for that purpose. For a number of beds across the state. And again, I know that we presented before HHS Oversight Committee, and we'll be happy to provide that information again.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to receiving it. One other question I have, and that is the 5 million. Was that out of capital or was that out of general funds?
I'm sorry, the 5 million in relative to this item?
Yeah, relative to the construction.
It was general funds.
Okay.
The renovation of the unit?
Yeah.
So, yes. Yep.
Okay. So we have, what, 13 months? So we best get moving.
We have begun all of the design work around those projects. So although the construction hasn't necessarily started, a lot of the design and architectural work has begun and commenced.
Well, thank you, but you need to get to the construction so you can save it off for the next budget, because I don't want that to lapse. You know.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Are there any further questions on this particular item? I know we kind of went all over the place, but thank you. I'm not sure, it's been a long time since we've had the hospital in to talk to us, so we probably had a lot of questions that, yes. Oh, did you have another question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Item 10 just caught my eye as you were talking. It looks like we're going to spend money on improving signage to make them ADA compliant. Given that we're building a new facility, is this just wasted money? I mean, it brings us into compliance for a few months, but signage is unique to the structure. So I'm just wondering if this is a waste of money.
Thank you for the question. So no, it wouldn't be a waste. And really, the current signage within New Hampshire Hospital is not sufficient to even our current state. We still have signage within the facility that refers to the Anna Philbrook Center that used to reside within New Hampshire Hospital. So it's greatly needed throughout the facility. And then signage that is specific to the forensic portion of the hospital would be incorporated within the construction and build of that specific facility.
Could I have a motion to approve FIS 22?
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. 162. Thank
Second.
you. Second by Representative Lynn. Will the clerk please call the roll?
22-162, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
Thank you. The vote being 9-0 on FIS 22-162 is approved. We now turn to tab 7, FIS 22-196. Okay, sorry. Someone have a question on Representative Leishman?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll echo what the chair said, Mr. White. It's nice to see you here. For those of you that don't remember, he helped us out in Division 1 for a couple of terms and made us all look very good, so it's nice to see you. My question, and thanks for appearing, the notice of award doesn't seem to match up with your request. Am I misreading something there? There's the total, the award notices, the numbers or the amount of federal funds obligated by the action, again, don't seem to match up with the department's request. So I wonder if you could help me out with that.
Sure. So this is a bit of a unique scenario. Hey, can I borrow that for a second? Sorry, I've lost my papers up here already. Wait a minute. Shoot. Right. So this is a bit of a unique scenario where the prescription drug monitoring program was transferred over to the Department of Health and Human Services during the budget. The second year was not budgeted completely. It was only budgeted at $255,000. And what we're seeking to do here is we're seeking to shore up the entire budget for the full state fiscal year, similar to what we would do throughout the course of the normal budget process. I can't really speak to why the original budget was only $255,000 and not the full almost 1.5 million.
So if I could, Madam Chair, if
Please.
I'm looking at, there was surveillance, prevention, and it's like 3.6, and again, you're only requesting 1.2 with the request, so I'm still not quite following you on this.
Sure.
So just from maybe it helps us to kind of almost take a further step back. So for state fiscal year 2022, for this program, we received the budget was appropriate and it was full. What we're seeking to do here is add the additional $1.2 million here to make the budget for state fiscal year 2023 what it should have been in the original budget. We received the budget from OPLC. It was transferred over during the budget process, and it was not completely funded.
I guess I'm still at a loss, Madam Chair, but
Okay.
I appreciate as I'm just looking if I could take this further, the award ending date is 8/31/22, and yet your request goes through June 30th of 23. So that's what caught my attention.
Understood. I apologize, Representative Leishman. Yes, so we have received notice from the federal awarding agency that we will be receiving the second award here. It should be happening next month, if not in July. You're referring to the award that ends in August, included in the
Right,
item.
that was attached to the
Yes.
request. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and that other award will be coming. So what we're seeking to do here is following the same approach that we would follow during the budget, where we would budget the appropriate amount for the year, and then we would receive those funds at a later date.
All right. So it's just we haven't received the notice of award that you're referring to in the request.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll? Oh, I need a motion. Okay, Senator D'Alessandro and Senator Rosenwald.
22-196, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
I'm going to vote no, Madam Chair.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the vote is 8-1.
the vote being 8-1, FIS 22-196 is approved. Okay, before we move on to section 8, I want to remind everybody that use June 30th, 2022 as the time that their request, they were going to spend all of the money that they requested. Do not come back to me. You made the decision that that money would be spent by 30 June 2022. So I am not going to think about those. I'm asking you to think about how you're going to do that in the next 45 days. Okay? So, because there were a lot of requests in there that had 30 June 2022 dates. So, just fair warning. Okay. We now move to tab 8. The first item that is off is FIS 22-161. Are there questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. So, this item has to do with helping people who are elderly or who have disabilities schedule COVID vaccine appointments, I think, as I understood it. And I'm wondering, are these Medicaid beneficiaries? And if so, why are the MCOs or area agencies not able to do this work? Is it outside the scope of their contracts? And really, why does the state have to take this on?
Whoops, sorry. I thought I was put, thanks, Nathan. See, teamwork. Chris Santinello, Associate Commissioner. So, thank you for the question, Senator Rosenwald, and I'm trying to get around this piece of equipment. Okay. This is actually to help, will occur in our service links across the state. So, some people with disabilities would get support from the area agency, but the service links, or their managed care organizations or whoever is serving them. But the service links serve a broad range of individuals and families with disabilities, and who are aging. There's about 70,000 people a year. So this is really broad based, across the community for those, seniors that do not have the support of another organization.
Are there further questions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve? Senator D'Alessandro, do I have a second?
Second.
Representative Lynn? Will the clerk please call the roll?
22-161, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Representative Mumberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-161 is passed. Okay, our next one is, that's off the calendar, is FIS 22-198. Someone have a question on this?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I think
Representative Edwards.
I think what we wanted to do in pre-fiscal was just to hear the dialogue on the process of how we received this money, how we got the profit, and how we're teeing it up for reuse in a subsequent time frame. I think we wanted the story.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Ian Watt. I'm the Deputy Director for the Division of Public Health Services. So when we had initially requested funding for this item, we were in the middle of the Omicron surge this winter and had worked with a vendor and a series of vendors. It was a competitive bid to obtain antigen tests for sale at the New Hampshire liquor stores. We had anticipated being able to sell all of the tests in the liquor stores. There was an immense shortage nationally, and in the state they weren't available anywhere at the time. We actually initially wanted a smaller procurement, but we weren't able to get a competitive bid for a smaller number, which is why we were able to procure, or ultimately procured, a million tests. Those tests have been for sale since January in the liquor stores. What happened was, simultaneous to the award and receipt of those tests, there was a confluence of a few events. First of all, the federal government initiated their free to your front door test program, which was good news for people's front door, but not good news for demand for these tests. There was also a shoring up of the national supply chain and tests, so they became available at big box stores and retailers and pharmacies where they weren't otherwise. So as a result, we did not see the demand that we were anticipating. The tests have been on sale at the Liquor Commission since January, and as a result, we're looking to reallocate and reappropriate some of those resources to other known audiences that have demand that we've been providing tests to support their operation, safe operation and continuation.
Yes, Representative Edwards.
Thank you for the explanation. I'm just curious, as you're looking at other potential buyers for the excess inventory that we have, could you like tick off a few of them? I just want to make sure that we aren't disposing of them or reselling them to some ne'er-do-well organization.
So thank you for the question. So the intent is actually not to sell the items. The intent is to use them for some of our audiences to whom we've been providing tests for public health and safety reasons. So the audiences that we're proposing, as are noted in the letter, are federally qualified health centers, FQHCs, hospitals, camps, to ensure the safe operation of camps this summer, our schools, as well as the public health networks who support first responders and others. So these are audiences that we, the state, have been providing these antigen tests to via federal allocation and other funding sources. So the intent would be to repurpose these for a known need that we have and have been providing throughout the pandemic.
So one other.
Yes, follow up.
So I heard the confluence of events, and I understand all that. I'm just wondering if, in retrospect, if you think that that there was anything fundamentally wrong with our estimation process to begin with, or just stuff happened.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. Thank you. You know, hindsight has been very valuable throughout the pandemic, as we know. We at the time did have the question both internally and I believe even from this committee of if a smaller number would make more sense as a starting point. What we found when we went out to the vendor community is that no one would entertain a smaller number. And that was because the competition was not just our state, many states and other big corporate entities that were trying to procure for their own sake. You know, again, competition has been fierce, and when that's been fierce, you know, vendors have been able to leverage to turn to the numbers they want. So we picked a number that we thought and do still see demand for. It just didn't materialize in the liquor stores.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept Okay, thank you.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Okay. 22-198, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerichs, yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
FIS 22-198 is approved, 9-0. We now move to tab 11, FIS 22-168. Are there any questions on these transfers that are being requested? Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Representative Lynn. You ready? Clerk, call the roll on FIS 22-168.
22-168, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0 on FIS 22-168 is approved. We now turn to tab 12. FIS 22-169. And this is authorization to, change the date to 30 June 2023. Thank you. And make some changes in class lines. Are there any questions on this item? Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept? Thank you. Second,
Second.
Senator Gray. Thank you. Are we ready?
Yes.
Will the clerk call the roll?
22-169, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-169 is approved. So, Mr. White, you did pretty well today.
I give the credit to everyone else.
Okay, thank you. I'm Glad you're here. Okay, we now move to tab 13. FIS 165, Fish and Game. Authorization to transfer 235,000 from the Fish and Game Reserve to the Fish and Game operating budget through June 30th, 2023. Are
Move
the-
the item.
Thank you, Representative Leishman. Do I have a second? Thank you, Senator D'Alessandro. Clerk, call the roll, please.
22-165, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Yes. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-165 is approved. We now turn to tab 14. FIS 22-166, authorization to transfer 200,000 from the New Hampshire Fish and Game Fund Reserve to Fish and Game operating budget. So are there any questions on this?
I just have
Yes.
a quick, is anybody from Fish and Game?
Yes, they are.
For the record, I am Scott Mason, Executive Director of Fish and Game.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Nice to see you as always. Just wanted an update on the hatcheries. What's going on there? How many hatcheries are we going to save? and how are we going to do it?
Well, we have applied, we received the 55 million of ARPA money. We are currently working with HDR, they're an engineering firm, and we're going through a study process and looking at our hatcheries, trying to inventory resources to make that decision on exactly how many we'll keep and where they'll be.
Further question? And when will we have
Yes.
an answer?
We're hopefully going to be able to start on the completed study won't be done until December. But we do believe we're going to be able to identify assets that we could begin the process of designing replacement hatcheries in those locations prior to that.
And one further question, madam. Now how about the production of the hatcheries for this season? People have fishing licenses, want to know if stocking is going to take place. Is that going to take place? And do we have-
Our goal is to try to maintain production as best we can through the construction process. We will probably be staggering our construction so that we can try to maintain, maybe beef up a little bit of extra production at some of the other hatcheries while we're working on the hatchery we're working on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
But there's no effect on
That's
fit.
right.
There's no effect on fish. I don't know,
Well, those who
production.
have bought licenses, obviously.
Yeah.
bought
Correct.
them with the-
But there's
There-
no effect this year.
There'll be no effect this year. I would think it would be, it'll probably be in calendar year 24 when we will really begin, and that's when we may get pinched on production.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept FIS 22? Senator D'Alessandro, do I have a second by Senator Gray? Will the clerk please call the roll?
22-166, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Yes. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-166 is approved. Now turn to tab 15, FIS 22-186. And this is a request from the Judicial Council to approve $595,000 through June 30th, 2022. Are there any questions? Seeing none, could I have, thank you, Senator D'Alessandro. Do I have a second?
Second.
Representative Lynn? Oh, you know all about these guys. Oh, the clerk, please call the roll.
22-186, Representative Edwards. Yes. Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Yes. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-186 is approved. We now move to tab 16, authorization to transfer $2.4 million in unexpended funds from registration fees for OHRVs. All right, are there any questions? Oh, could I have a motion, please? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Representative Lynn, are there any questions? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
22-167, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Yes. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
The vote being 9-0, FIS 22-167 is approved. We now turn to tab 17, FIS 22-170. And this is to modify the SNAP Education and Training Program and accept and expend $230,000 in federal funds. Could I have a motion to accept?
Move to accept.
Okay. Moved by Representative Edwards, seconded by Senator D'Alessandro. Are there any questions? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
22-170, Representative Edwards.
Yes.
Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9-0.
Vote being 9-0, FIS 22-170 has been approved. Okay, we now move to our information items.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there is a late item.
Oh,
Sorry, that's
That's my-
22-205.
that's my fault. I
That's okay.
apologize. The late item is from DOIT. I know it was sent out. Could I have a motion to approve? Senator Rosenwald, second. Thank you, Senator Gray. Are there any questions on FIS 22-205?
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Um,
just a moment. Mr. Goulet, would you mind? Thank you.
Good morning again.
Go ahead.
So I'll admit that, given that this was a late breaking item, I've not read it. And so what I appreciate Mr. Goulet doing is just walking us through what this request is and why we're receiving it now.
Sure thing. So this request was driven by a couple of things. One was that during our COVID response and recovery activities, we really could have used this capability. We were standing up sites really quickly, and in some cases we were trying to operate without very good network connectivity at all. When looking at the ability on the public health space to do this, we thought it was important to have this capability where we could stand up a very high quality Wi-Fi network that could span over a large geographical area and handle a very, very dense population of users for that purpose. So that was one of the design criteria. Ironic or non-ironically, coincidentally, that very same design criteria is a perfect fit for some non-state events that we could potentially support. The one that we are targeting and highlighting in the request is the crafts fair at Sunapee that's run by the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. They've gone from historically the entity that was leasing the Sunapee space had pretty high quality Wi-Fi that was covering that area, and so it wasn't required as an additional thing with the Vail lease. Part of their shtick, or how they like to operate, is to not actually have Wi-Fi there, have it be an outdoor activity. So they actually pulled all that stuff out of there, which was, I'm not aware that it impacted much, except for the craft fair. It impacted extremely heavily. So I ended up getting a reach out from them and asking for help with that, particularly after last summer's event that didn't go well from a network connectivity perspective. I apologize for the late item. The timing was such that, it was approved to go at a very late date, and I'm concerned about supply chain issues, so I'm trying to get this processed as quickly as possible. So I do appreciate your indulgence on this late item.
No problem. Are there any further
Move the
questions?
item.
Okay.
We already have a motion.
No, we already have a motion. Will the clerk please call the roll?
22-205. Emmerich votes yes. Representative Leishman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 7-0.
The vote being 7-0, FIS 22-205 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now move to the informational items. I want to point out that we have two people from the audit side of LBA that Mr. Kane is recommending step increases, right? So, okay, just that's that. Details of fund balance that DAS provides to us. I realize that this is an arduous task, and I thank you for what you're doing, but over the summer, I would like to get together with you and the LBA and see if there isn't some way that we can make this report a little better than what it is today. I don't know how many others of you have looked at it, but anyhow. I also will request, I'll get it, and that is to come and talk to me about the employee health insurance, because I still have questions in all of that. So we'll do that sometime as well. Okay. The next one is FIS 22-189, and I see that Commissioner Edelblue is here, and I would like to ask a question on childhood lead poisoning, if I might.
For the record, Frank Gadelblue, Commissioner of Education.
And Brandon Kernan, Administrator of the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau at DES.
Thank you. As I read through the report, I am very disappointed in the schools that are reporting. You know, I didn't see a lot of movement on that. And I know that this is an issue that we've had for several years. We've put money into it, any number of things. So I guess that we need to try to up the number of schools and daycare centers. Did we pass that bill on lead and reporting? And that's the one that that requires the schools to report. Is that correct?
I think they've already been to
Right, but
required to report, to test and
yeah.
report. That bill lowers the
Oh, just lowers the threshold. Yeah, go ahead. I just think it's unconscionable that our schools and daycare centers are just not doing a good job with this. But
Thank you, Representative. Yes,
yeah,
House Bill 1421 did go through conference committee. In addition to lowering the action level for schools and child care facilities from 15 to 5 parts per billion, it really strengthened a couple things that I think will inspire people to react and also make the department more aware if they do. One thing it does is it has very explicit parental notification requirements now. Instead of just a general statement, you shall notify guardians and parents, it talks about direct notification and also posting. But it also now says clearly that you have to report all sampling data to the Department of Environmental Services. Prior to that, we only had to see the results that were exceedances. And so now we'll have access to all the data. Another thing to remember is although the legislation and funding was established a few years ago, it was only staffed about a year ago with a part-time person funded by a federal grant, and then a contractor just came on board the last few months. And so there's a lot of activity now in getting the word out to schools and childcare facilities. We're learning a few things though. The number of grants here don't reflect necessarily inactivity from schools and childcare facilities. The way the law reads is they have to sample pretty much any fixture that could be available for drinking water. And sometimes there's just sort of abandoned sinks in a classroom that's not really used. And so it's easier just to turn off the water to the sink because no one's using it. And that's why the result might be high, because it's a sink that has stagnant water in it. And that's the kind of data that we're trying to capture with our contractor now. There's no reporting mechanism built in necessarily to show that. But now we're going to get all the data. We will be able to respond to those exceedances. The other thing that's happening is that this, and I think it's on Admin Services website now, there's a request for proposals to establish free testing services for lead for schools and childcare facilities. And that's again funded with a federal EPA grant. And so that'll make it more accessible for those facilities to readily sample and not worry about cost and budgets. And I guess the last thing that we're contemplating and still having discussions is wondering about possibly tweaking the parameters of the grant. We know some facilities are opting to address a $500, $1,000 problem without seeking reimbursement through the grant just because of the extra administrative work. It's not worth their while. So, you know, I'm pretty optimistic about them that these facilities are responding to the data because, you know, they're in the business because they care about children. I just don't think we have the mechanism until now, and we still need to figure out the staffing because House Bill 1421 didn't include money to administer it. So we're going to try using more federal funds to hire another part-time person or more contractors, because at the end of the day, we have 1,500 new entities we have to essentially regulate and about 30,000 compliance points, and we're doing it with a 3/4 of a staff person and a contractor. So a lot of this is really needing the schools and childcare facilities to
cooperate and do the work, because we're not going to have this big regulatory regime in place over them.
Let's hope not. Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for about 3 years or so, schools and childcare facilities that have tested and found that their drinking water has greater than 15 parts per billion of lead in it have been required to remediate. Why is it that only 51 of the 219 schools that you list above that lead content have remediated? And I ask this knowing that we took the enforcement provision out of House Bill 1421.
So I will let DES comment as well, but what I can tell you is that in many cases, when the schools have had a hit, so they've identified a, some water source that had, and it may or may not have been used for drinking water. So I just want to be careful because sometimes it's the janitor's closet as well. But sometimes when they discovered it, they just remediated that themselves. Many of our schools have switched over to water bottle filling stations as opposed to drinking fountains. They had already had those projects in place and they went through that. And that would have solved that problem. But rather than go through the process of applying through DES for the remediation plan, they just did it. So a lot of that remediation has taken place, even though it doesn't reflect in the reported numbers. And I think DES should comment as well.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm pretty confident the majority of the exceedances have been addressed. And again, not everyone felt the grant program was worth their while, that it was just easier to mitigate the problem without the state funding and the state paperwork involved. I mean, one thing we can do, and again, we have very limited staff, is reach out to the exceedances and ask where they haven't told us how they've mitigated it, or if they've deactivated that fixture, and we can try reporting that back to you.
Thank you. So how, if they're not reporting that they've remediated, what makes you confident that the majority of them have remediated those outlets over 15 parts per billion?
Well, I have a lot of confidence in the education system and the people that work in it. I actually have 2 brother-in-laws, a spouse, and a sister-in-law, all work in school systems, and have seen when there's a water quality issue, be it a high fluoride level or a lead level, and seen that they've taken actions to notify people and to mitigate the problem. Yeah, there's probably somebody out there that needs a little more oversight and nudge, but I'm confident in general the people in this sector are addressing a high lead level. They, if anyone, understands what lead can do to children.
So the only, and I would just comment, Senator, relative to that, is that, again, I'm not sure that, so there's that, but another perspective might also be, I mean, I know at the Department of Education, we have repeatedly brought this to the attention of our school leadership, through written notifications and, over a number of years through superintendent conferences, through superintendent meetings. So we continue to say to them, and we have grant funds available to you if you have an issue that needs to be remediated. So while they weren't required to report that information to us, we were very active in terms of pushing this out to them. And we work directly, I mean, I know you know Amy Clark as well, works very closely with the facilities folks to make sure that they as well know, as we're going through kind of the building inspection process, they know that there are, if there's any barrier to, remediation, that we have solutions to that.
But if I could just follow up, I don't want to overpromise though. I mean, we are not staffed to have a comprehensive regulatory oversight of this law and all these entities for these provisions. We are getting the word out, we're getting the data, responding to high levels. But in an ideal world, we'd have several staff in a database that takes the flow of data, sends out letters requiring notification, making schools prove they did a notification, showing the schools they have violations, making them show they have corrective action. We just can't do that with a federally funded 3/4 of the time staff position. So we are really trying to leverage our partnerships with HHS and the Department of Education and our contractor to do the best we can. There were fiscal notes to all these bills, and the funds weren't there, but I think we're still doing a very effective job with the approach we're taking.
So, I mean, I think schools are great too, but I'm not hearing that beyond your confidence and the fact that you know people who work in schools, that we're actually getting reports from the schools that they are remediating a problem that we know poisons hundreds of children in New Hampshire. Is there more legislative action we're going to need to take to require that when the schools that have right now 15 parts per billion, starting in, a few months, hopefully it'll be 5 parts per billion. Are we going to need to require the schools to report to DES that they have remediated the problems?
We can keep establishing requirements for schools and childcare facilities on what they have to do. But if you want DES to be able to say, like we can for water systems, here's exactly where each water system stands. They collected their sample. Here's the result. Here's the notification. Here's the treatment that was installed. If you want to do that, we're going to need more than a year-to-year part-time person funded to administer the program. And I'm just trying to be transparent with you. I mean, we're trying as hard as we can, trying to find resources to implement the law, but there's limitations when there's funding limitations. There's a lot of requirements without really a lot of budgeting and financing for it at this point. And so I'm essentially saying we're doing the best we can. I can't overpromise based on the resources that we have been given for this statute.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would hope that you could convince your leadership in DES to request that for the 24-25 budget. I mean, there's obviously a line item there for it, and so I would ask that you pursue that with leadership.
Thank you. We can pretty much draw from our fiscal notes and put it right in there. Thank you.
Okay, well, then we got to move up. But anyhow, hopefully we'll see some movement on this. Okay, are there any questions on the dashboard? Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Was nothing on the dashboard. Okay, thank you. The dashboard is also an area that we will try to work on over the summer. Going to be a busy summer for some of us. Okay, FIS 22-192, Health and Human Services. So, Representative Leachman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for appearing. So if you go to page 3, item C, I believe this whole item was addressed by fiscal back in December, this roughly $28 million. And further down in C, it talks about the department is working with CMS to obtain approvals for distributing the 2.8 million. I kind of thought that was part of the request in December. Is that like a separate item now, or?
Good morning. Thank you for the question, Representative Leachman. For the record, Henry Lippman, Medicaid Director. I'm just referring to the letter for a moment.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
Yeah, yep. This is the school component. Or this is the school.
And that's the same.
Yeah, and it's also, is that the?
Chris Santinello, Associate Commissioner. Are you asking about the 2.8? There's in C, there's 2. It's the 2.8 for private duty nursing?
Yes,
Okay.
I guess I'm asking, so the managed care organizations and the private nurses, et cetera, have those funds been distributed yet, or how is that working out? Because it was a concern back in December that the case managers weren't receiving money, and I'm just curious whether they have received any of that 2.8 million, or is this, you're still working with CMS to get that money?
So thank you for the question, clarifications, because now I'm tracking what you're asking about. So the approximate 28 million that was for managed care, we got approval for that subsequent to, and I think it was probably in January for the approach. Then we needed to get approval for the claiming methodology, meaning how we actually would draw the money down. It took us until we thought we had clearance based on regional office approval and mid-March, but then we got a stop, if you will, from the central office. We cleared that up recently. I think it was the end of April. We're now in process of, if you remember, part of the process is getting the agencies to sign an attestation recognizing that this is one-time money and et cetera, and that how they're going to use it. We're, I'd say by the end of the month, that 28 million, assuming that the agencies have submitted and all their attestations, will be out the door. We had probably we expected that was going to happen in March, but we got held up with respect to the claiming methodology approval. And that's why today we're just reporting generally that we haven't used the whole 72 that we came in for. We do expect that all the money that we talked about being within there will go out. With respect to the case managers, which I think was Senator Gaida had that question in particular, and possibly yourself. We have received approval under the Appendix K authority just earlier this month, and we have submitted the state plan to be able to also do the CFI case managers. I think we're going to be able to get that money out in the month of June.
So the 2.8 million roughly will be, you think, sometime in June?
Right.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair.
So we'll follow up on that in our July meeting. Representative Edwards.
Thank you. I was with Gaida and Leishman, curious about the case managers, and I think I recall that the department said this would be resolved by April or May, and now we're into June. Is my memory faulty? Are we slipping? What's going on there?
Based on what we understood at the time when we came in, that was, I think, a reasonable time frame. In fact, we thought it was reasonable until mid-March, until we got what we understood to be an approval to draw the federal funds for this. And then we got a second, just as we were about to pull the trigger, we got a second email saying, hey, wait a minute, we want to look at not only New Hampshire, but how other states are doing this. And so we had to wait until the central office at CMS looked at it, and we felt we always had a solid methodology, and we got the green light as soon as possible. I mean, we were on them pretty much. I met with the head of CMS Financial Management Group, the head of the Managed Care Group, on a telephone conversation to make sure it wasn't something specific to New Hampshire, and it wasn't. They just wanted to make sure they're doing consistently among states, and it just took us about another 45 to 60 days longer than anticipated as a result of that.
Are there any further questions? Okay, on this report?
On this report, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
On the paragraph 3, Medicaid to schools providers, I think Fiscal Committee approved a request where the schools part of it was just a couple of words in a 3 or 4 page document. $7 million in federal money was being moved. I've since talked to Ms. Tilley, and she says that this program is going to require $1 million. I'm curious if we're talking about the same program or if there's a different program. She's trying to set out an RFA so that the schools can say whether or not they want to participate in this program. Is that what this is, or is this something different?
Thank you for the question. It is something different. Schools today can claim under certified public expenditures, additional, matching funds. What we've been doing all along is the enhanced 6.2% that has existed. We've passed that along. Then this HCBS, the Home and Community-Based Service component, we can pass on an extra 10% for rehab-oriented services. And so we're in the process of putting that money out too, and I think that will be out before June as well.
Okay, so in Ms. Tilley's effort, she's thinking that about 3 or 4 schools in the major population centers are going to expand behavioral health services in schools. Is this to what extent is this related to that program? Are these for services offered in the school or something else?
So for this particular program, it's only goes for services that were provided between April 1 of 21 and March 31st of 22. So if it's not online yet, it's not subject to what's in this request or in this report.
All right, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. FIS 22-193, dealing with the Lottery Commission. I was particularly upset that scratch tickets are down 10%. For some reason or other, Mr. McIntyre told me not to worry about that, but it affects the it does have an effect on our education trust fund. Not a lot, but some. So, thank you for coming today. Your mic's not on. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Jim Duras, the CFO for the Lottery Commission. Being the CFO, I sometimes look at things differently than Charlie does. He's sales side, I'm accounting side. But obviously we're having a lot of financial pressures. It's not a non-essential item. Gas prices, grocery prices, and everything certainly are going to have an effect. But when you really look at the overall picture, we're still up overall for the year. This is really the first quarter we're feeling that pressure. I do expect to see it in this upcoming quarter as well. But when you look at also over a 2-year span, we're still overall up year to date $100 million in revenues. Sales during a 2-year span. So yes, we saw record highs last year. Can you sustain those record highs forever? Of course not. So we're seeing a little bit of flattening out, but in my opinion, that's what we're seeing. It's just a little correction and flattening out over the past incredible growth over the last 2 years.
Okay, so I will watch it next quarter.
Very good.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. All right, appreciate it. I'm sorry that you were here for so long. Okay, nice air-conditioned building. What the heck? Okay, we're now going to turn to Department of Education, ARPA funding update. Welcome, Commissioner.
Good morning again. So we are handing out to you right now 2 documents. One is several slides that we'll use to facilitate our conversation, as well as a handout that details information by individual school districts that we assumed individuals might have an interest in. What I can tell you as well is that you called for us to come before you, I don't know, it was like a month ago or something like that. And I had been hoping, my fingers were crossed, because we're in the process of building an interactive website that will just make all of this information transparent, and through data visualization, people can just click and they'll be able to see what's going on at the state level, at the district level in terms of the use of the funds. So that will be forthcoming. We are close to getting that done, but we weren't there yet. I needed one more month, but I just figured I'd come in and give you your update now. If you turn to the first slide, which is on the back of the cover slide there, this is just to level set you in terms of the funds that we are bringing to you today. In fact, we might have expanded the scope of this a little bit. We could have expanded it more, but I want it to be as responsive as I can. The request was for information relative to ARP funds, but there's a lot of other grants that are out there. So what I brought to you today was ESSER 1, which is often referred to as the CARES Act, ESSER 2, which is often referred to as CARISA, and then ARP ESSER, which was the specific request that you made to us. There are other funds out there as well. We received $45 million through the initial COVID relief funds that the state received. We also received funding relative to IDEA. So we received about $10 million of pass-through funds relative to IDEA, which is not on here, as well as we received about $3 million for homeless funds. But today we are focusing on what I think was the main thing that you were looking for, which was kind of the ESSER-related funds, which is the CARES, CARISA, and ARP funds. And you can see the award amounts that we have there, the amounts that are allocated to the LEA. So it's a 90% pass-through grant. So basically 90% of those funds pass through to the districts. And we'll give you some information on that. We're also going to give you some information today on the 10% state level activities as well. And then you can see the amount, and really what I wanted to describe to you is kind of the process that it goes through. So what happens is a school, so we get the grants, then we make the allocations to the schools in our GMS, which is our grant management system. The schools then go in and complete a budget for how they're going to use those funds. That budget is approved in terms of whether those funding activities, the budgeted activities, are authorized activities under the grant. Once those budgets are approved, then the schools go out and they spend those funds. After they spend those funds, then they submit the documentation to indicate that they've spent their funds according to their budget. That approval process kicks off a payment to them. And so it comes out through the typical state payment process. And simultaneously, what that does is allows us to draw down those funds from the G5 system at the federal government level. So then we reimburse the state. So we simultaneously push the funds out and we draw the funds down from the federal government. And so that is the process that happens. And I can tell you have a question. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So you allocate the money. The schools have to spend their own money?
Correct. We are a reimbursement grant system, which is the way that
Okay.
most of the states
Okay.
operate. Yeah.
And so this is reimbursement.
Yes.
I just wanted to be sure that that's what it was.
It is reimbursement, right?
Okay.
So, right, they budget it, they spend it, they report that they've spent it, then they get reimbursed for those funds.
Thank you.
Great. And then what you'll find is that sometimes so when they budget the funds, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a locked-in number. They're able to oftentimes reopen anytime they want. They can reopen the grant. So they might have planned, like, we're going to budget these funds on X activity. They go out and they do a bid on that activity, and they realize it's going to cost us less. So then what happens is the grant gets returned to us, is what it's called. It's kind of an odd name, but it's returned to us. So it's now they're able to update the budget status, and then it gets reapproved, and then they're off and doing their updated budget. So there's a lot of pushing back and forth as the budgets change. Okay. Any questions on that slide? So on the next slide, what I did is outline for the LEAs some of the common uses based on how they've been spending those funds. And I indicated both the budgeted as well as the amount that's spent to date. And the reason I did that is because there's a lot of stuff budgeted that hasn't been spent. And spent means when the state reimburses to the LEA, not necessarily when they spend it themselves. So that's what spent means. And so you can see that the big categories are salaries and benefits, construction and maintenance, equipment and technology, supplies non-instructional, which would be primarily your COVID response type supplies, and then support services as well. And then you can see where they have spent across those various categories. You can see that there's a little bit of difference. Software licensing is in the top 5 relative to spend, but it is not in terms of the budgeted. But that is something that oftentimes when you're buying software, you have those upfront licensing fees. So those probably just came through a little bit more quickly, and that is reflected in that. So these are the places where those funds have been budgeted by the schools to be used. And this was a top 5, and we cut it off at top 5 because there was a fairly substantive gap between number 5. Like rather than give you the top 10, it was kind of like this was a natural breaking point. We have all of the data all the way down to the smallest one, but I just thought that was a good place to break it so that you can see where the numbers are. I think, for example, on the spend, the next lowest level was like $1 million. Yeah, so it went from like 5 down to $1 million. So we thought that was a pretty big jump, and we cut it off there. And then is there any other questions on that page? And so then on the last
yes, it appears we have one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Using the money on salaries and benefits and being one-time money type things, do we see a problem coming on down the road in the local communities when they're using it for ongoing expenses?
Yeah, so we have been encouraging our districts to recognize that this is one-time money, depending on which grant. The last grant is going to expire on September 24, and unless it's extended by the federal government. But even so, we're encouraging everybody to work to utilize the funds by that current finalized date. So some of that salary and benefits is going to be associated with the current teacher force that they have. It could be overtime, could be stipends, could be bonuses to try and retention bonuses or something like that. Some of it is interventionists that are being hired to be able to respond to some of the learning disruption that's taken place. So in theory, Senator, if the learning loss is caught up over the period of the grant, then you wouldn't need that learning interventionist at that point in time because you've made up the deficit that resulted from COVID, and so that wouldn't have to continue. But certainly it is something that all districts need to be paying attention to in terms of making sure that we haven't created a cliff for ourselves. And quite frankly, there was a bit of a cliff if you go back to the 2008 through 2012 recession, there was a lot of federal funds that came in, and that did result in some of that cliff effect.
Thank you.
And then on the last page, this is the state funding. So what the way the grant is laid out, it allows the state to set aside a certain percentage for administration of the grant, and then it includes what's referred to as SL or state level activities. Some of the grants, in particular under the ARP funds, the grant specifies how we're supposed to use it. Like we're required to spend at least 20% on learning loss. We're supposed to spend 5% on summer programming and 5% on after school programming. So they narrow down the scope of what we can do. And so in here, what I did is I just outlined a number of the contracts that we've entered into relative to various state level activities. The goal of the state level activities was try and invest in programs that are universal in terms of supporting the schools and not supplanting activities that they may have. So for example, the iLearn, which is a Canvas learning management system that was made available to all the schools. Many of our schools were using that system already. So to Senator Daniel's point, so we were able to just, supplement that, the cost of their learning management system for several years, but that would then transfer back over. Discovery Education is universal, curricular, high quality instructional materials for students. So essentially saying, every student in New Hampshire, has a high quality learning management system, which means that they can the teachers can organize the instruction in an effective way, and then filled that with high quality instructional materials. So students, whether you live in Bedford or in a less affluent community, you're going to have access to high quality instructional materials. EANS is a bit of an odd name. That is emergency relief to our non-public schools. So there's a separate category of funding that we pass through to EANS. Many of you are familiar with the Learning Pod program that we've stood up. The Rekindling Curiosity is our summer camp program. Yes, Every Student is our tutoring program. We've got another tutoring program that we're going to be bringing online. Again, these are universal programs to help the teachers in the schools across the state who are trying to work with students who have learning loss. One of the things that I think is interesting as well is the way that these grants kind of rolled out. The first funds came to us in May of 2020. That would have been the Gear 1 and the ESSER 1 funds. And obviously the circumstance of the pandemic kind of evolved over time. And so I can tell you quite frankly, sometimes there were decisions that you made in May of 2020 that if you knew where you would be 18 months later, like you didn't know where you were going to be, maybe you would have done something a little bit differently. So I don't know if I can go through all the list and explain the various programs, or if everybody's all set, then I can answer specific questions.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that DOE has contracted all of these things. Is that what I heard you say?
That's correct.
And then it's given down to the school systems?
Correct, and then we pass through to the schools.
Okay. Okay. Representative Leachman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your information. I was hoping maybe in the future that you could give us what like Gear, Eanes, Esther, all these things mean, because a lot of it, I guess, looks Greek to me. But
So actual titles?
yes, so
Okay.
what they actually are. Some of them I have.
It's
actually
pretty
not.
straightforward. Like I mean, and I may not even get them all correct because I'm so used to using the
It's
vernacular. But
straightforward to you. It's not necessarily straightforward to people that are not familiar with all of those weird acronyms in DOE.
right,
So yeah, just send it to us.
no
if you
problem.
would.
Yeah, but
Okay.
as an example, like GEAR is Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, so they all mean something associated with that.
And just to follow up, if I could, Madam Chair.
Sure.
On the allocations and budgeted spent, I'm just kind of curious because some of these are, I'll just take dairy cooperative as an example on page 1. Allocated 3.5, budgeted 3.4, approved 3.4, and there's nothing.
Can you just tell me what grant you're looking at?
That
'Cause
was
there's
the
all three
allocation
grants are in there.
page. I'm sorry, ESER 2.
ESSER 2, got it. Okay. On dairy
So,
cooperative,
say-
3.5, right?
Yeah,
Budgeted.
and I was just kind of curious, you got the budgeted approved and yet nothing has been paid. Why has nothing been paid, for instance, to that school district?
Yeah, so it could be that they've simply not, either spent, it's not paid at this point in time because they haven't asked for reimbursement. Once they ask for reimbursement, then it will show up in the paid column. But it could be that they are, maybe they're allocating those funds for a construction project and they haven't started yet. And
Okay.
so once they get started, then we'll get the invoices for that.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I am also, when does the ESRA 1 money run out?
So ESSER 1 expires in September 22.
So that's 3 months away.
That is 3 months away.
Okay. Do the schools understand that?
They do. We continuously are providing that information and reporting to them.
Yeah, well, obviously they. Okay, because
Well, they're
that's
pretty, I mean, spent, they've already drawn down,
Yeah,
30 out of
that's pretty good.
33, and it could be that they're sitting on reimbursements and those are going to, in September, we'll get a whole bunch of bills to process.
okay. Okay.
Oh, okay, and Melissa's just pointing out that many of them are using that for summer programming. And I have to apologize, I failed to introduce who is with me today. So Melissa White, and by the way, I'm happy to introduce her, is our newly minted Director of the Division of Learner Support.
Okay.
And Jessica Lescarbeau is our Program Administrator for our COVID Relief Funds.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize for not introducing them in the beginning.
No problem.
I'm apologizing to them as well.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. I realize that our ESRA 3 money, that doesn't expire until
24.
24. So I understand that the school systems supposedly are spending their one and two money, and then we'll.
That is what we're encouraging, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. And then all of this just shows where they where they are.
Right, and then I just broke down by each grant. You have a consolidated is the first page of the school district handout, and then a separate page for each of the individual grants if you want to
Okay.
see it by school district.
Okay, okay. So you allocate this, then they use this money,
Correct.
whatever it is. And what's your allocation formula?
It's we get the allocations from the federal government. It's based on a Title I formula.
Oh,
So
okay.
the same Title I formula that's used to allocate Title I funds to the schools is the same
Okay,
formula
so
used for
that's
this.
how the ESRA money was
Passed through to the schools.
passed through based on Title I.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's quite all right. Okay, are there any further questions? Seeing none, we will, I thank you for this, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity for an update later on.
That would be great, and hopefully the website will be online at that point in time, and you can just go browse it.
Yeah, like I have nothing else to do. Okay, Department of Transportation. Looking forward to hearing about this. Oh, you don't have to leave. You might want to hear about DOT. You know, you probably have a pothole in your road someplace. So, all right, nope, no fixing for you.
I know they'll be watching online. This is must-see TV, so.
You know, as much as you make fun, you would not believe the number of people that tune into this.
We have an engaged electorate, for
Yes,
sure.
we do. Yes, we do.
Madam Chair, thank you for inviting us here. I guess good afternoon to other members of the committee as well. I'm Andre Briere. I'm the Deputy Commissioner, and I send the regards of our Commissioner, Sheehan, who can't be here unfortunately. She is under the weather, but I am sure she is watching. So good afternoon to Commissioner Sheehan out there. I also brought our Director of Finance, Marie Mullen, who's to my left, and she'll be talking about specific numbers, as well as representatives from our Aviation and Transit bureaus who are right behind me, and they're here to answer any specific questions about spending in those areas of their responsibility. But overall, our ARPA, CARES, and CRISA expenditures are all responsive to the very real decrease in ridership, passenger volume, as well as impacts to our highway fund that we experienced through the pandemic. On the transit side, we're roughly 2/3 of the passenger volume that we were pre-pandemic. That's very uneven. There are certain segments that are as low as 1/3 of the ridership still. On the aviation side, TSA tells us we're about 88% of pre-pandemic passenger volume, but that seems to be recovering much quicker. But each of these types of money is allocated in slightly different ways and at slightly different levels of expenditure. So for details on that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Marie Mullen.
Could we hang on just a second?
Sure.
Are we expecting ridership on buses to increase with the gas?
Traditionally, Madam Chair, that's what we see. And we met not too long ago with leadership from Boston Express. That was a specific question I asked them. Is the previous iteration of this really back in the 2008 timeframe? What did you see in terms of ridership? And it was a dramatic increase. So there have been some trend lines that are encouraging. You never hope for high gas prices, but the one area that it can benefit is transit ridership. So we do hope and expect to see an impact from that. Whether it goes all the way is just remains to be seen, and we'll see over time.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you and good afternoon. So the first page of our presentation is a review of our federal highway funds. So these funds were apportioned to the state of New Hampshire based on the federal highway allocations. So as Division 2 is well aware, the state of New Hampshire has the lowest allocation of federal highway funds in the country. So again, our stimulus funds were the lowest in the country, but we were apportioned $41 million. And those on Division 2 also remember during the budget process, these funds were budgeted in our 22-23 budget to supplant highway funds, as the highway funds had some significant revenue shortages there. So those were input to cover our highway maintenance costs, so approximately 41 million over 22 and 23. And so you can see here what we've expended so far through fiscal year 22 is about $31 million. And we anticipate the rest of the remaining balance to be drawn down within the first quarter of fiscal year 23. And then we'll have drawn down the full 41 million of this allocation of CRISA funds. Any questions on the federal highway piece of this?
Yes, Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I've had constituents asking me recently when Concord Coach is going to restart their bus service to New York City. And I wonder if any of you know the answer.
Do you want to come up front? I think you have to come up.
Yeah. So that Commissioner Sheehan can hear it at home.
That's right.
Hello, Commissioner. Good
Yeah.
afternoon, everybody.
The only reason you need to use the mic is because it is on
The streaming.
streaming,
Yeah.
and if you're not using the mic out there, they can't hear you.
I understand. Yes. Yes. Concord Coach, it is on their radar. They have plans to reinstate that service to New York City. They don't have I am not aware of a definite date. They're hedging that against a lot of other, their core service, what they consider going down to Boston, but it is in the works as far as I know.
Thank
And-
you. I hope you can try to pin them down on a
We'll do.
date and let
I will
me
follow
know.
up and get a more definite answer than
Thank
that as
you.
well. Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And so if I could add one thing to that answer, and that is, it's a good, I'm sorry, but you don't need to stay up there. There is a kind of a multi-headed hydra here, right? So it's not just decreased ridership that we're dealing with our transit providers. It's also, as the committee is well aware, a shortage of CDL drivers, and the increasingly competitive market for those drivers in our region. So those are really the two things that they're struggling with, and I know every transit provider's in that same boat. So they're going to operate just as quickly as they can hire.
Senator D'Alessandro, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wonder if by not having complete service, do we in any way mitigate the mitigation plan that we have in place? I mean, that's why these buses are running, right? That's why the federal government's paying us. We're mitigating. Is there a problem with that?
Thanks for the question, Senator. So yeah, I mean, in terms of, I guess in the sense of if you build it, they will come. If you have the service, you're going to get more ridership. If you limit that service, you turn off ridership. And yeah, that's a dynamic that our transit providers are well aware of, which is why they're trying to maximize routes. They've done a pretty darn good job through the pandemic, some heroic efforts to maintain those routes. They continue to do so, but yeah, they're very sensitive to and cognizant of decreased services and trying to minimize those and expand services as quickly as they can.
Further point, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
Because the Gopher Committee did allocate $7 million of subsidy for that program in order to keep it going.
Yeah, the private intercity bus. Yes.
Thank you, Madam
Yes, Senator.
Okay.
There's
Oh,
another
one more. Yes. Representative Senator
you.
Rosenwald.
Some number of fiscal meetings ago, we approved money to pay like an incentive to CDL drivers. Do you know what the impact or the success of that program has been?
I don't think that went through DOT.
Yeah, those are not for the transit CDLs. You're talking about for the, we have a CDL training program that has been very successful in training our folks. And that, I want to make sure I'm addressing the same thing that you're asking, but this was, you're talking about the program to help our winter maintenance by training CDL drivers and establishing that training program?
No,
No, something different.
No.
Okay.
I think
This
it
was
was an
transit.
incentive
it was an
program to recruit new
Right.
CDL applicants
that's
to
correct.
increase the pool of CDL
That did not
licensed.
go through DOT. It must have gone through
Must-
another agency. I
must
don't know.
have gone
It could
through
have been
safety.
Oh.
or another agency that, so, I mean, we could
Okay.
follow up, but I don't believe that's through DOT.
Yeah, well, maybe we could have Mr. Kane follow up with safety and see what that progress is, because it, obviously, they go hand in hand. Thank you.
All right, so to continue, the second page is a summary of our transit funds. So these come through the Federal Transit Administration, FTA. Again, these are apportioned funds that come to the state, except for the first column there, the Gopher Funds. Those were part of the CARES Act distribution that came directly to the state. As Senator Rosenwald was indicating, or maybe it was Senator D'Alessandro, $7.5 million from that Gopher account for the CARES Act funds were provided to intercity and commuter bus operators to assist them in resuming services. And these were spent by the deadline in December of 2020. And so you can see the 3 bus operators there that received those funds.
So this was your Gopher column is CARES.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next column over were the CARES Act funds that were directly apportioned to DOT through FTA. And those funds were apportioned and allocated by state, again, to support operating capital and other expenses, to help mitigate the effects of the pandemic on transit services. Funds have been utilized to supplement losses in net operating expenses, as well as support to COVID-related PPE, cleaning, and other necessities during the COVID crisis. So, so the CARES Act, the CRISA, and the ARP funds are all apportioned and used for those purposes to assist with their operating expenses, as well as PPE and those type of things. And so we have the breakdown here by transit agency and how much they've received, what's programmed and then expended, and they do need to provide backup to these and expenditures for these to be distributed back to them. So you could see the bottom line there. There's a reserve for future eligible commuter city bus services. So these are funds right now that haven't been identified, but they have to be spent by 2029. So these are funds that are there. And as the bus providers, we're looking at ridership, their operating expenses, those will be allocated at that point once it's been determined that the need is there.
And so your column is called CARES Act. When is that expire?
So the CARES Act goes until expended, but we believe we'll have
okay.
expended those by 2024. So the additional $11 million balance there, those will be expended in the next 2 years.
So transportation is different than everybody else.
Yeah, these were specifically broken out in the act, going directly to FTA and part of the apportion programs. And there's several different programs within, the
No,
we've
I
talked
just
about
meant
that
I meant the
disability eligible.
deadline for spending.
Yes, yes.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions on the transit funds? Okay. So then the next page, the next 5 pages are related to our aviation and aeronautics program. So again, these are funds directly apportioned to the state and to DOT through FAA, through the Federal Aviation Administration. This first page here details out CARES Act funds, and it indicates Group 1. which means these were for the 10% match that is required on federal funds for capital projects. So in FAA capital projects, 5% match is required by the airport, 5% is paid by the state. So these funds covered that state and local share of those capital projects. And you can see the amount of money and what's been expended and encumbered related to those capital projects that have been identified. Those are CARES Act funds. The next page are also CARES Act funds. And these we have as group 2 to 4. These were issued for operations and maintenance. So these are pass-through amounts that were specified by FAA allocation. So they had an allocation that they came up with, and each airport was given a specific amount based on the allocation. And they've had to identify the eligible expenses and submit those. And once they did, they received these funds that were apportioned by the FAA. So you can see here nearly all of the 15.2 million has been expended and distributed to the airports. Okay, if there's no questions on that one, the next page are CRISA Act funds from FAA. And these were apportioned for operations, maintenance, and concessions. So you can see a couple of the airports, Lebanon on the 2nd line and Manchester, Boston Regional Airport on the 5th line, have indicated that they will be looking for some reimbursement for concessions, and then operations maintenance on all of the other airports. And again, they need to provide, eligible expenditures for these to go out. So again, it's been apportioned by airport, the amount that they're eligible for, and once they provide those eligible expenditures, those will be submitted and reimbursed to the airports. Okay, next page is the ARP funds, and these were also for operations, maintenance, and concessions. So the ARP funds are newer, and what we're trying to do is draw down the funds from the CARES Act and CRISA first. So you'll see, not as much of these funds have been expended to date, but that's the plan. And so we have, up through 2024 just to obligate the grants and then to spend it. So these airports have additional allocations that they're eligible for as they provide, as we draw down the CARES and CRISA, then we'll move to these ARP funds depending on the eligibility.
Can I just, on the Mount Washington Regional Airport, is that the one in Freiburg, or is that someplace else? Freiburg?
I believe this is Whitefield.
Whitefield?
Correct? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we didn't give any money to Freiburg. Okay. That's fine. I hope Maine did. Pardon? Yeah, I know. Yes. Okay. So I guess I need to talk to DOT and Maine. Okay. Thank you.
And then on the last page, again, these are ARP funds, and these are for the 10% match, again, for the capital grants. So this would cover the local and the state share on these capital grants. And you can see the grants that have been identified to date. Once the work has been done, then they would get reimbursed from these funds.
Okay. So what's going on with roads, bridges? Aren't we supposed to get money for that?
The funds related to roads and bridges are not COVID relief funds. Those were part of the reauthorization of so that's the IIJA that came out. So those are not COVID related funds. It's the natural authorization of our transportation budget. So
Okay.
before that, it was the FAST Act. It was a 5 years, and then they've now implemented the IIJA, which will be over the next 5 years.
Okay, and that's the one, so there are no special funds for DOT.
No, the IIJA are part of that federal reauthorization. It's part of the 10-year plan. We've brought that forward through the legislature, and
Okay.
HB 2022 is now with the legislature. So all of those funds are included in the 10-year plan. And as we go through the budget, will be included in the budget going forward.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, Representative Leishman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just first, good job. It was nice to see start dates, completion dates, and a very complete report, so that was nice.
We're engineers, sir, so.
Oh, there you go. So maybe a non-engineer question, if I could, Madam Chair. So I have a friend in the asphalt business, and he said asphalt is going up just as fast as diesel. How is that asphalt increase impacting like your highway projects? Because don't you have like a clause in there that some of it's based on cost? So are you still able to pave the amount of roads that you anticipated, or is that going to impact the amount of road mileage paved?
Well, that's a great question, sir. And we're seeing that, and what you refer to, that's the contingency that's in every contract. We're seeing inflation is really proceeding unevenly. Certain things like petroleum-based, steel, things like this, we're seeing significant increases in that inflation rate. And we're just starting to see the impact of that on bids and contracts. The contracts that exist already are set. And a lot of the larger contractors who do our work, have big yards with a lot of materials that they've already secured over the last couple of years. So it's going to be a very gradual appearance of that inflation as far as in project cost increases, things like that. That's paid attention to at the microscopic level by our project management office. And we're just starting to see it. I guess it's often referred to as a snake. You see it, kind of coming through the system. And as these contractors are, even the smaller contractors that don't have the luxury of large yards full of materials and are doing just-in-time procurement, they're seeing those results right now. So yeah, inflation's a concern. It sure is.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
So I think the bottom line there is we're keeping our fingers crossed, hoping we can pave this year. That's it, from an engineering point of view. Okay, are there any further questions? I sincerely thank you, and I appreciate all of the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I just want to pass out or give you the dates over the next several months for our fiscal committee meetings so that you can plan now. Our June meeting will be on the 17th. Our July meeting will be on the 22nd. Our September meeting will be on the 9th. Our October meeting will be on the 14th. And our November meeting will be on the 18th. So whether you're running or not, whether you win or not, whatever, I'll expect to see you here on the, I will expect to see you here on the 18th. And any of us can fall into any of those categories. So, is there any other business for the fiscal committee? If not, thank you all, and we'll see you June 17th.